Atop the battlements of Castle Curmudgeon, where we are so backward and unprogressive, we still think boys have a penis and girls have a vagina. Good evening, Mr. and Mrs. America, and all ships at sea. Welcome to the Blast Radius. So glad you could join us. Here is your Decline of Western Civilization news roundup for the work week ending 8 March 2024. Dateline Washington, Monday, 4 March. While 9-0 Supreme Court decisions aren't nearly as rare as some people think, in point of fact, there are more 9-0 decisions than any other kind. When you get a 9-0 decision in a high-profile case from probably the most ideologically divided court of the last 150 years, that is the Supreme Court's way of saying, seriously? You brought us something this freaking stupid? Which is exactly what happened this week when, in a decision that was a surprise to absolutely no one who can tell their ass from a hole in the ground, the High Court held that no, neither Colorado nor any other state can simply decree who is allowed to appear on a presidential ballot and who is not. So, as if we needed any confirmation of the fact that the unelected Colorado Secretary of State can't simply declare Donald Trump guilty of a criminal offense with which he has never been charged, which occurred allegedly thousands of miles away from Colorado, and use that as a pretext for excluding him from the election and thus disenfranchising the population of an entire state? Well, now we have it. And why would any idiot actually think they could get away with something so self-evidently hostile to the precepts of the democracy they claim to cherish? Because Trump's psychosis complex is one hell of a drug, that's why. Dateline Brussels, Tuesday, 5 March. The European Union announced this week that the only fitting response to Russia's bellicose attempts at territorialist expansion is by its own bellicose attempts at territorialist expansion. So the EU says they are going to massively step up their efforts to create a standing military and to outfit it with billions and billions and billions of dollars worth of weapons and equipment and materiel. But wait, I hear you say, doesn't every EU member state already have a standing army? Well, yes, they do. And doesn't NATO also exist? And isn't NATO's stated purpose to forestall Russian territorial expansion? Yes, it does. And yes, it is. But like a man once said in a movie, why buy one when you can buy two for twice the price? And let's go ahead and say the quiet part out loud, shall we? The EU is very desirous of building its own military, but it doesn't have anything to do with guarding against external threats. They want to build an armed goon squad they can use to terrorize the population of any member state that gets any ideas about trying to leave the club. So welcome to the 21st century version of the Fortress Europe Roach Motel, where you can check in, but you can never check out. Dateline Columbia, South Carolina, Wednesday, 6 March. Comedians around the country cried tears of heartbreak this week when Nikki Haley abandoned her campaign for the presidency. Nikki Haley, whom you might have noticed, uses exactly the same cadence and intonation for every sentence she speaks. In fact, if you built a wind-up politician using 1970s technology, it might sound exactly like Nikki Haley sounds in real life. It's really kind of creepy how there's never any deviation in the way she speaks the words she says. One can't imagine that none of her handlers has noticed this problem and urged her to correct it. Someone on her staff could do her a great service by erasing all of the commas from the text of her speeches. So farewell, Nikki Haley. I feel like we hardly knew ye, and that's probably for the better. But still, we owe you our thanks for creating a phenomenon we never thought we would see. Woke Democrat voters, leftist mega donors throwing their support behind an unreconstructed 1990s neocon who still thinks the Iraq War was a good idea. So remember, when you kick them, it hurts more when you're wearing heels, and Trump's psychosis complex is one hell of a drug. Dateline Gaza, Thursday, 7 March. In a story that seems to perfectly typify Joe Biden's Middle East policy, hell, maybe his whole presidency entirely, 5 Palestinian civilians were killed this week when the United States made airdrops of humanitarian aid packages which landed on their heads and caused them to assume room temperature. And so far as I'm aware, this is the first such story anywhere in the world in at least the last 80 years, because normally when you're making airdrops of humanitarian aid, You take one of two approaches. You either drop packages that are too light to hurt or kill anyone, or you announce in advance where the drop's going to be and you make sure the civilians are warned in advance to stay clear of the area. But then, why bother airdropping humanitarian aid into Gaza in the first place when you know perfectly well it will all be taken by Hamas anyway? If one were inclined toward cynicism, one might suspect it was all just a dramatic production done for the benefit of the fake news media with no practical purpose except to make Joe Biden look like a loving, benevolent grandfather who kills you by dropping food on your head. Dateline Berlin, Friday, 8 March. In the latest example of the woke leftist Ouroboros gleefully devouring its own tail, a German extremist group calling itself Der Vulkangruppe, or the Volcano Group for the non-Teutonically inclined, claimed responsibility this week for sabotaging a Tesla production facility located in the Berlin suburb of Grünheide, which seems weird because the wokesters are always telling us how much they sparkly heart electric cars, how electric cars are going to save us from being destroyed by the sun monster, how we're going to one day live in a big, beautiful woke-topia where nobody burns fossil fuels and the entire surface of the planet has been lovingly festooned with mirrors and solar panels and bat-chomping, bird-slicing eco-crucifixes, and every shitty third-world country has been thoroughly strip-mined of its rare earth minerals so they can all drive fancy electric cars and buy $1,000 brand-new smartphone every year. But your correspondent digresses. Let's hear it from the Vulkangruppe themselves. Quote, "We sabotaged Tesla today. Tesla eats Earth, resources, people, labor, and spits out SUVs, killing machines, and monster trucks. Our gift for March 8th is to shut down Tesla," end quote. So if they hate gas-powered cars and they hate electric cars just as much, mightn't we conclude that they just hate vehicular locomotion in general? The irony of which probably never occurred to any of them when they went home after bombing the Tesla factory and ordered their dinner on DoorDash. But then, self-awareness has never been an attribute that our woke leftist friends have possessed in any great abundance. And that, ladies and gentlemen, and non-binaries, is your Decline of Western Civilization news roundup for last week. May it rest in peace. And with that, I pass the control yoke over to my intrepid and illustrious co-host, first ballot inductee in the Large Furry Hominid Hall of Fame, the one and only, your friend and mine, Mr. Caucasian Sasquatch.